What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back to talk some more Detroit Lions training camp. I was at practice once again today, and I have some notes, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, man, we are back with another one of these training camp videos. Now, this is going to be very similar in terms of format as the last video. A few differences. First thing is that I took out a few plays that I thought I kind of just had noted as like filler plays, meaning that I noted what the play was, but I didn't necessarily have a takeaway from the play, so I just kind of took a few of those out. So some of these I may be missing like a 2-yard run. I just kind of took it out because I didn't think it made sense to necessarily even bring that up, because it just kind of is filling time. And the last one was pretty long, so I want to try to slim it down a little bit, but I'm assuming it's going to be very similar in time length. And on top of that, like the last video, in terms of injuries and things like that, a lot of these things aren't confirmed yet. It's just what I saw at practice, so I can give you what I saw, but a lot of things may not be confirmed by the time you're seeing this video and by the time I'm recording this video. Now, before we get into some of these notes, first off, I want to give a shout out to everybody that I met at training camp today. Some of my dudes there, I see you guys multiple times. Shout out to you. And then also the new people that I met today. I say what's up. So I appreciate that. If you see me at training camp, say what's up. All right, it's cool. We get pictures, all those things. I think that's awesome. So shout out to you. If you met me at training camp today, I appreciate you. And if you're watching the video, that's pretty awesome. So with that, let's dive right into it, man. Let's waste no time. Today was a lot of 11 on 11, so we got a lot of team, back and forth work. And for me, a lot of my focus, my eyes, were focused on watching the trenches. I really wanted to get some notes for the offensive lineman and defensive lineman. That's not to say this by any means perfect, and like the last video, if I have the wrong player, that's something that can happen because, again, like sometimes they got their sleeves, the shirt pulled up, and I can't tell who exactly a player is. Or in the tight end case, we had 2 new tight ends to the roster that were like kind of listed, but at the same time there was some confusion there on numbers. So again, there's very possible that I have a number wrong in one of these notes. And then on top of that, I also did miss some plays. First off, because I kind of had to for a second, they thought I was taking pictures. I was just taking notes. So I had to put it down for a second, and then we got it back out. So I did miss a few plays. Nothing major. If there was, I would remember it. There was nothing key that I necessarily missed. It was only like 5 or 6 plays. I want to start with the individual drills first. Okay, I don't have a ton of notes from this. You see a lot of similar kind of drills that the players will go through in terms of making their cuts for receivers. We're usually like right in front of the receivers, so you'll see the receivers going through their work, and then you have the quarterbacks working through the pads, and the defensive backs, kind of doing the zigzag, catch the ball, those kind of things. So you get a lot of the same looks. The offensive line is usually nowhere near you, so you never get to see them. But one thing that did stand out is at the beginning of practice, Jameson Williams was working with, I first wrote it down like hacky sacks, but that would be way too easy. I think they were more like little bouncy balls. I don't know what they were. I don't know the exact term for them, but he was catching those with a receiver coach. It may have been Randall L. I don't exactly remember. It probably was Randall L. And he was working on just hand-eye coordination, I would expect, technique as well as a pass catcher. One thing I also noted was Jameson Williams wasn't wearing gloves, and I think that's something that's kind of normal with him is he doesn't do that. And I get that. Like, look, I don't like wearing gloves either. Okay, obviously I'm not an NFL receiver, but I just thought that was something to note, especially going through this drills. He was not wearing gloves, but he was catching these little balls and kind of working on that. The first time he was kind of like juggling them. There was kind of 2 at a time, so he was kind of catching them as he was backpedaling. Then he was working some over the shoulder. So I thought that was just kind of an important note. I mean, we talk a lot about, oh, there was a drop here or this or that, but it's very difficult to gauge a player that you haven't seen much of just in-game experience. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't a couple drops last year. There was a key drop that I remember on a comeback route, but to base a lot just on what you see from practice, like, we miss things and we don't always get the best angles of things. I just thought it was cool that he was working on that, and I'm sure he'll continue to work on that. That being said, though, there was a lot of 11 on 11 work, so I have a lot of notes in those scenarios. Some was first team offense versus second team defense, that kind of thing. There was a little bit rotational at the beginning. Then towards the end, we started to see some first team versus first team. So let's get into some of these notes. I'll kind of go play by play like the last video and just point out key things that I took away from each of these plays individually. It started off with Malcolm Rodriguez blowing up a screen. I had to take note of this because this is very similar to what we saw last year. He did this a lot. Malcolm Rodriguez blowing up screens. Now, there was another linebacker that really I thought shined today, and we're going to get to him in a little bit. But Malcolm Rodriguez started off with the bang, blowing up a screen. We know the way that he hits when he hits. Then you saw Sam Laporta, who I was very excited to see in these team drills because I didn't really see this on Monday. Laporta, I thought, had a lot of success attacking kind of the first level of the defense today, and I really want to continue to watch more because, again, a lot of my focus kind of went to the trenches, which meant that at times I didn't always see the whole route that was ran, but he did have a lot of success attacking the first level defense, and it started off with kind of a slant, and this one was really nice because it was one of those window shots. I don't know exactly what zone coverage they in, but they were in zone coverage, and he hit him in a little bit of a window, and what was nice is he had to contort his body. It was behind him, so he had to kind of reach back and make a nice completion. So it was nice to see some of that flexibility within Laporta's game, but also just to see him in team drills was kind of cool. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who kind of ran a little bit of a spot route, had that completion. However, the drive ended with an interception. Now, this is the first team offense against essentially like the second team type of defense here, and it ended with an interception, and that was Jared Goff attacking Derek Barnes. Now, this is the guy that I thought really shined from the linebacker group today. This was, I believe, a Tampa 2 coverage look, so he was working the deep middle. He was dropping deep, turning and running up the seam vertical with the tight end. So Sam Laporta was attacking vertically up the seam, and I believe there was a little bit of pressure on the play, but Derek Barnes did a really good job here in coverage. And if you know Derek Barnes in terms of zone, there was a lot of areas where he talked about he's needed to work, and wow, I thought he's gotten a lot better just from what I've seen so far this season. But this has been kind of a specialty for him in zone coverage because he's able to use just that straight line speed. Like, you want to run a guy vertical against me, I can keep up with that. And that's what we saw in this play. He contested it extremely well. He essentially had a pass breakup, tipped the ball up into the air, and it was actually intercepted by, I believe, Savion Smith. And that pass was to Sam Laporta as well. But it was very good coverage in that Tampa 2 look by Derek Barnes. We've seen him had a lot of success in those looks. And you think about a lot of the cover 2 and some of these players that we have that, have played in those defensively. We'll talk about some more guys. But Barnes fits really well for that role, playing the deep middle in that zone. And it led to an interception. Now we moved on to kind of the first team defense. I say that, but again, kind of like to what Aaron Glenn said, they were really rotating different groups, getting different guys out there. The first note that I had with this group was Isaiah Buggs with a nice run stop interior I was trying to focus on because I thought there was a lot of runs that were forced to bounce. Now, it was a really good point that was made when we were just kind of watching training camp and watching the practice, and this actually is very accurate. The first day I kind of noted it when I was editing, like, man, I don't really remember like seeing this. And today when it was brought up by someone else, I was like, oh, okay, so you're seeing this too. This actually is something that we're both seeing here, is that there's not a lot of pulling offensive line. There's not a lot of those, there's not a lot of the power scheme, there's not a lot of those certain things. It's a lot of zone rushing schemes in training camp. And I would assume a lot of that's probably just for like health reasons. Maybe they're also trying to work on some of the zone rushing. But I think it's a very important note when you talk about some of the run game success. And I was actually listening to a podcast on the way up there with some former NFL scouts. That's one thing that you really can't evaluate from training camp is, for the most part, the running game. Now, I think you can pick apart traits when you see Jahmyr Gibbs flash and you're like, oh, that's an athlete. You can see that. You can see when offensive linemen win their battle. But in terms of just the rushing game as a whole and how much success are they having, those kind of things, I think it's also similar in the preseason as well, especially if you're going to be very vanilla with the kind of looks, because we know the Lions were really the most versatile, if not one of the most versatile offensive teams in terms of style in which they would run the football last year. They mixed in all the different looks, the duo schemes, the gap schemes, and all these different things offensively, but I don't think you get as much variance when you talk about the training camp. It was a lot of just zone running plays, so I think that's an important note. But it started off with an Isaiah Buggs run stop. Then it was Alex Anzalone, who, man, he looked good today. Alex Anzalone with a nice contain on another zone run. He forced a cutback back inside. And then how about another guy that played really well today that I was very excited about? He was on my list of breakout players. It's on Bleacher Report if you guys want to check that out. Josh Paschal had a really strong day today to me in terms of setting the edge, playing the run. Now, we know that against the tight end, he should dominate that matchup. But for him, the challenge I thought last season, specifically when he was in that role, was the athleticism to keep up with. Are they putting you in a read look? Like, quarterback can keep it or you can hand it off. And then can Josh Paschal athletically handle that? Now, he doesn't really get that look from Jared Goff, so that's kind of something to keep in mind. But in terms of just purely setting the edge, and he may get that, down the road. But this note is Josh Paschal beating K.O.'d, who got some reps at left guard there. He may have also played a little bit at right guard, but K.O.'d, who was playing as a backup offensive guard, he beat K.O.'d for a sack. I thought Josh Paschal flashed a lot today, and that was the first time that I noticed him, and it was very early in practice. He's playing a lot with the first team, and I think that kind of speaks to what his role could look like this upcoming season. And of course, John Kaminsky will mix in there as well. And then you had Charles Harris with a pressure that forced an incompletion, and also a false start. Now, I didn't know who exactly the false starts were on, so I don't want to just say that was on this guy. I thought it was on Obina Eze the first time, but I definitely could be wrong on that. But I will say I think there was 3 or 4 false starts that I noted. Now, not really from the first team that much, but there were false starts, and I'm sure the Lions weren't exactly happy about that, but they were also playing a lot of 11 on 11. I think one time we actually jumped off sides, so there was a lot of that kind of thing that I'm sure they're going to want to get dialed in. Continuing with some of the notes here, then we had a pass play. Now, John Kaminsky was getting some looks on the edge as well. I saw today you got some different front looks. I talked about how I saw some 9 techniques today. I thought you also saw some looks today in terms of a 3-0-3, where you have your kind of your pure nose tackle playing a zero technique, and then they put 2 3s out there to try to get that one-on-one against the guard. If you do that, obviously you have to be able to play the center, or you can be in a situation where you're playing a little bit more of a pure pass down, you're just putting your rushers inside. But I thought you got some looks today with not just pure rushers, but also kind of your interior guys in terms of 3 tech, 0 technique, 3 technique. And of course, you know, that can lead to some matchups, especially if you have a 5-man front. There was even a 6-man front that I noted today, but especially if you have a 5-man front, that can lead to some real opportunities for those DTs working the guards, and then also the edge rushers working the tackles, potentially stunts and worse off of that. But you want to be able to really trust that nose tackle to handle his job in a 0. And if you're going to do things like that, and it's not a pure or obvious passing down, and even in a passing down, you probably wouldn't put someone over the center anyways. You probably just put 4 down. But if you're going to do that, you want to have a guy like Broderick Martin, someone like that can handle that responsibility. So that is something that I also noticed just in terms of some of the looks that they had up front today. But the next play that I had was a incompletion. It was thrown to Jamison Williams. It was a little bit in front of Jamison. That one fell incomplete. Another note to this play was Jermaine Ifedi was matched up with Aiden Hutchinson, and I thought that he did just enough. Like, it wasn't the cleanest rep, but he did enough to keep Aiden Hutchinson off of the quarterback to get the pass off. So that was something. Then we had a little screen play mixed in there, and then a Justin Jackson wheel route. Now, I heard yesterday that this pass was missed, but this is something that we've seen now over the last 2 years the Lions have tried to utilize with not a ton of success. If we can consistently hit those passes, we're going to have real opportunities there. Now, this wasn't the toughest throw. I mean, he was pretty much just wide open, but we've seen it where we've had those a little bit tighter windows where you've kind of had to drop it over the linebacker onto the back, and we have not been able to hit those. This one was much more open. You saw Justin Jackson kind of just get around Jack Campbell. It was probably some sort of zone look because I think the outside receiver kind of just took his man with him. So it was probably some sort of zone look, and the coverage followed, you know, the outside receiver, so there was no one in that kind of second level or third level defensively, and Jackson was wide open, had a big completion. But that is something that I have seen, and we've seen that in years past. On to the next team, it started off with Jermar Jefferson. I thought he showed some nice vision here with a little cutback, inside run, inside zone run. It's difficult to kind of see like, oh man, that was nice vision there, but this one looked pretty good. He kind of sensed the push inside, bounced a little bit, picked up positive yards. Then Jaron Williams. Now, here's the unfortunate part. So Jaron Williams was injured today, and again, I don't know the seriousness of this. He was carted off. A lot of times you're doing that, you know, just for protection. You're not going to make the guy walk if he's injured, especially in the lower body. It's a long walk, so let's just take the dude in the cart. Let's be cautious. There's no reason not to do this. But Jaron Williams was injured, and it was unfortunate because he had this nice play just a few plays before the injury, which was him just flying. I believe he was lined up in the slot. That's where he was for a lot of his reps. He was lined up, I believe, in the slot, and he flew over, and you see him just kind of take out a screen. You saw how fast he was moving. Now, Jaron Williams isn't someone that I think gets a lot of attention because his path to the Lions isn't like he's, you know, first year in the league, so there's a lot of hype. He's a rookie. It's not that, right? He spent time in the league. But I think if you were just to say, okay, I'm just going to pull up his numbers. I want to just pull up his numbers and see what he's about. And you just look at those, you're going to be like, oh, okay, there's something here. And I know we've talked about him in the past, and I've done a video on him. Feel free to go check it out. But I think just to remind you, he allowed a 38% completion percentage with the Giants in 2021. Now, limited role, but on 21 targets, he allowed 8 receptions, 53 yards, and a 46.3 passer rating. Now, he's gotten work in practice at the safety position elsewhere, and he's also played that slot role. He's played on the outside. For him, he was a little bit undersized coming out as an undrafted free agent. Unofficially, he ran a 4.28 40. Now, I don't know if that's legit or not, but it's incredible if he's anywhere even near that kind of range. And he looked like he was flying on this play. But the unfortunate part is just a few plays later, he was injured and he was carted off. So I'm hoping it's not too serious there because, again, this was a very productive player. He just played in a very limited role, but I thought you saw a lot of things when you did watch him. You saw the zone feel, speaking of cover 2, Tampa 2, those kind of things, you know, the 2 high shells. We just talked about that with Derek Barnes, and when you look at it for Jaron Williams, like he's played in that on the outside with the Giants, and he's been successful in that role with a really nice feel of when to get depth, when to stay aggressive, that kind of thing. Man coverage in that kind of Wink Martindale system. When he was with the Giants, he likes to play a lot of man, so even their slots would get up. Sometimes they would even go press alignments from slot on tight ends, slot receivers. So he's had to play in those spots. He's also even played some off coverage from that position, which you do a lot of times. Like there's a play against the Chargers that sticks in mind where he covered up Joshua Palmer pretty well. To keep an eye on, but he just doesn't get as much attention. But unfortunately, we'll see where this injury is at. The play that I had was an incomplete shot. I believe it was to Maurice Alexander, and this one was really good coverage. It was kind of just put up there. This cornerback coverage. There was safety over top. The ball wasn't really open. And then you saw Pittman make a stop on a little bit of a spot route, kind of over the middle of the field. Muhammad Ibrahim with a little bit of a flat reception. interception. And now let's continue with some of this talk about the interior defensive linemen. So with the focus here, two guys did pretty well today. At least they made flash plays. Chris Smith out of Notre Dame, and also Corey Durden out of NC State. Those are two guys that I thought flashed in their own right a few times today. It's not to say they dominated all day, okay, because, it's kind of like one of those things where, well, they can have 30 reps, and the two that you write down, hey, you got a sack, it's like, that's great, okay, but, like, what about the other reps? So there's always that part to it, but did they flash today? Yes, they did flash today. They both flashed today. And to start off here with Corey Durden, who was aligned in that 3 technique, working outside shade of a guard, and he had a pressure. Next note that I have comes from Levi Onwuzurike, who continues to work out there, and I thought he flashed some pass rush today. Now look, I don't have like a great skit for this yet, but you guys know that I will, okay? We've had them in the past. We're going to have something very creative, very fun for this. However, I still have to talk about this year's sponsor for the football season. I'm very excited about this, and I really appreciate this opportunity. We have partnered with BetUS, man, and BetUS is a leading online betting platform that offers a wide range of sports betting and casino games. Now, BetUS has a reputation for the reliability, their security, and their excellent customer service, and there's a lot of ways to get in touch with them. And it's very easy to sign up. So all you have to do is click the top link in the description. They're hooking you up with some nice bonuses. So if you click that link, top of the description, you can claim some nice bonuses. All you have to do is sign up. It's like 2 pages, very easy to sign up. Then you can claim your bonus. You can see there's multiple different bonus options. You make your deposit, and if you make a minimum $100 deposit, you can get a 125% match on that deposit. So they're hooking you up. BetUS has a lot of different ways to bet, so it's not just football. I mean, they hit on all the major sports: football, basketball, baseball, soccer. I mean, hey, if you're into soccer, there you go. Heck, they got esports on here, man. There's tons of different ways to do it, whether that's, game props, pre-game betting, whether that's over-unders, whether that's future bets, live betting as well, including parlays, so you can build out your ticket and do things that way. If you're a returning member, there are 5 currently re-up promotions. There are 6 listed currently sign-up promotions. Through BetUS, you become a loyal member to BetUS, and this leads to other perks, including free payouts, free monthly tournament entries, bigger bonuses. I want to shout out to BetUS. I'll have something very creative going forward for this, but for now, shout out to BetUS. Now, the run defense, was, I thought, a little bit up and down, but in terms of just getting pass rush, I thought he flashed a lot there today. They run stop. It was about a 3-yard pickup, so it wasn't like anything behind the line of scrimmage, but it starts off a little bit of a run stop. And with the third team, you saw Adrian Martinez kind of show off some of that athleticism, broke the pocket, right, broke contain, and then you saw Brandon Joseph kind of work his way down the safety. He hit him with a nice little pump fake, got him in the air, took off, picked up a nice little chunk, and then this is where the injury occurred. It was kind of like a fly route pattern, kind of like a fade, thrown to Maurice Alexander, and that was the play that Jaron Williams was hurt on. And again, I don't have any details on that. But going back to the Levi point, the next play that I listed was Levi getting pressure from a 3 technique as well. And this actually led to an interception by Brady Breeze over the middle of the field. I think it was like a diving interception, but Levi got pressure on that play. Really flashed the ability to get a step and get some pressure. It wasn't always pretty, but he was able to get a step and kind of work through half the man. And obviously coming out of the draft, that was something that we were really excited about, is that he could flash that kind of explosiveness off the line. For him, it's just about getting back and healthy, but I thought he flashed a lot of that today. Back to this first team offense, and this was an Aiden Hutchinson sack. Goff technically threw it, but he would have been sacked. They're just not hitting the quarterback. They kind of put St. Brown on Aiden Hutchinson, and obviously it was kind of like a boot play, but Hutchinson was there. He shut off Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he ended up getting the sack. Now, Goff seemingly wanted to go deep. He wanted to take a shot, so he maybe held it a little bit too long in that case. But Aiden Hutchinson, who had a nice day today, he had a sack right there, and that kind of just started everything, because the very next play, I have Aiden Hutchinson listed as a sack, which was the cleanest move that I saw from him today, which was kind of that signature sidestep, move that he utilizes. The guy with elite agility. We saw it a ton at Michigan. We saw it last season. Just a sidestep, and he did it on Penei Sewell, outside, inside. Just completely went by Penei Sewell. I mean, it wasn't even close. I don't even know if he got touched on the play. Going back to this defensive line a little bit, just to make some more notes here. Aleem McNeil. Now, this was just, a short run to the left, and I don't know who actually made the stop. But what stood out to me, I was focused on Aleem McNeil. He was lined up, and I believe it was a 2 technique from my point of view, which means head up with an offensive guard. And he just shed Big V immediately. He threw him on the ground almost like immediately after the snap. And we know Big V's a big dude. Now, Big V does get on the ground too often. It was one of my notes that I had when we were talking about him. But Aleem McNeil, man, I'm telling you, Aleem McNeil looks nice. He looks good out there too. Big deal. You just start to watch him individually and you start to see like what he's really doing. I thought that was a great example of it. Back to kind of the passing game. Cam Sutton with a pass breakup on Marvin Jones Jr. I talked about him a lot on Monday because I was very impressed. Here we go with a pass breakup. Now, that's not to say that he was perfect on the day, but that was one of his good notes from the day. Then there was a kind of a post shot to Khalif. It was well overthrown. I mean, he wasn't really open, though. Jerry Jacobs really contested it well. Then Kirby Joseph. We talked about this on Monday, showing that physicality. I love when we can kind of double up on things that, we think about. Kirby Joseph, physical, flies in the box, makes a big hit, tackle for loss on Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, he's playing with that intensity, and you see it, like when he's signing autographs, the intensity he has. He was showing that on Monday. He showed it again today with a play like that. Then back to the rookie, Sam Laporte, nice little slat route. Again, kind of attacking level 1. You saw the slants, you saw the out routes. Okay, and again, for me, the big thing is that when he's aligned in those slot roles, when he's playing off the line of scrimmage, which a lot of times, we saw him do in college, he went beyond just sitting in line. And in roles like this, where he's aligned in the slot, and he's asked to run a slant, or he's asked to run, the out route, or maybe he's asked to run some option routes, and it's not necessarily from a stack formation. So if he's just purely manned up with a guy, maybe they're playing some sort of leverage, but if he's just manned up with a guy, can he consistently beat that? Now, we have some zone beaters that we talked about, but also the man beaters are going to be crucial to me for a guy like Sam Laporta, because he can be a huge weapon in level 1, and I think we have a lot of the other weapons, on board. He could be a really nice weapon. Speaking of that, St. Brown. Now, that's not my next note, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, the way that he's been attacking the middle of the field, kind of the 15-yard range, has been extremely promising. The hands are just ridiculous. Like, he's insane in terms of the way that he catches the football, but the success that he's had attacking the middle of the field has led to, again, like, we need those guys to be able to also dominate underneath. And I think we had a lot of pieces that could do that. You had Sam Laporta, and that great about him is he's a different mix. Like, I know Khalif can win underneath. I think Jahmyr Gibbs can win underneath. But a guy like Laporta gives you a whole different body type that can do something like that. The other note that I had was Kobe Sorstel was matched up with Aiden Hutchinson, and I was like, oh, this could be bad. But he actually did pretty well. Now, the ball got out very quickly, but he did pretty well, kind of forced him to his outside and kind of squeezed off the block. Now, that being said, Aiden Hutchinson would have something to say about that a little bit later, but at this point, that was a pretty good rep. Then we saw Khalif Raymond with a little bit of a spot route underneath, kind of hit a little bit of zone hole. Aiden Hutchinson dropped back into coverage, so he kind of put it by Aiden Hutchinson, and that was completed for a short little pickup. Then, like I said with St. Brown, hit a nice little dig route on Cam Sutton, so matched up with an outside corner there for a completion. He's had a lot of success doing that. And then it was Khalif Raymond. Now, this one was just off his fingertips, and the ball was probably a little bit deep on this one, who had Kirby Joseph beat pretty well on this play. The ball was incomplete, but Khalif, we know he's one of the best route runners out there, so, I mean, I just had to bring that note up. And then again, back to Josh Paschal, another great edge set here. I kind of touched on this earlier that I thought that he had these. Great edge set. He was on the right side, defending a stretch run, and he essentially shut it down, just setting a really strong edge. Here's what I was really excited about. This was an Alex Anzalone interception. So we know once we get inside the 10, when you get into kind of these condensed situations offensively, a lot of times it's misdirection. You get a lot of moving pieces. You get a lot of fast motion. I mean, we see it. We see it every week when Shane Zylstra is wide open in the end zone again. Like, we see that creativity. Well, what I think is very promising early is that you're seeing that a lot of those moving parts, now I'm sure it's not everything they're going to bring out, but a lot of moving parts hasn't left someone wide open immediately that often, right? So this was an example. He had a short little motion. I think it was a short in motion from Jahmyr Gibbs. Quarterback looks that way. It's not there. Forced to pull it down and then go elsewhere. So we started to see a little bit of a rollout from Goff, and he ended up trying to fire it in there to Marvin Jones Jr. Now, I didn't have a problem with him trying to fire this in from our point of view. I was like, oh, throw that, because Jones was getting mashed up by Alex Anzalone. He was kind of just sitting in his hip, and he tried to kind of separate late and just make the grab, and Jones is capable of doing that, but Alex Anzalone was having none of it. I mean, he stuck right with him, basically just jumped in front of the route. Beautiful interception. Give me some Duracell, and that was a beautiful play. Now on to the next unit. Start off with a note of Benito Jones getting a little bit of pressure. Then Derek Barnes again. A great run fill and stop. Like, Derek Barnes plays fast. If you just go back and watch last year, he showed a lot of improvements, specifically against the run. Like, he was really good against the run. And now there was hit and miss there, so sometimes you get just bad results. But at the same time, there was a lot of good to go with it, right? There was much more consistency, and there's a lot of good flash to go with it, especially in big moments. You can remember some of the goal line stands that we had, like Green Bay at home. Well, Derek Barnes here with a great run fill and stop, just playing extremely fast against the run. Then back to that man, Josh Paschal, who I listed for a pressure. Now, there was like a comeback route that was completed. it may have been to a tight end on this play, but it was Josh Paschal once again, who I noted for having some more pressure. Then it was James Houston on a zone run play away from him on the backside, who he was on blocks, who used that athleticism, ran it down from behind, made a short gain stop. And then it was Thomas. So we talk about Starling Thomas a pretty good amount, and here's Starling Thomas. One thing that I saw when I had watched him, back at UAB, was the top of the route, right? When he plays off coverage, we know how athletically, impressive he is, and that he can be sticky and that he's physical. But at off coverage, what's that footwork like at the top of the route? See him lunge. You'll see him get in positions where it's kind of like a little bit of a false step to being able to dive on the football, and it's just like it takes a little bit too long occasionally. Well, it started off from off coverage with him being able to stop at the top of the route. I didn't necessarily see the footwork, but I saw him break, get back to the ball, pass break up on Antoine Green. That being said, though, a couple plays later, 2 plays later to be exact, Antoine Green came back, ran essentially the same curl route on Starling Thomas against off coverage, and this time he was able to complete the pass. So that's something to watch for with Thomas in terms of like his development, because there's a lot of things to like about him, especially if he's going to play on the outside, because we're going to give him off coverage looks, is how much can we really tighten in his breaks at the top of the route. And the first time, he had a nice little pass break up there. Now, Chris Smith. So we talk about these young guys. Chris Smith, Corey Durden. Chris Smith, I noted with a run stop. Now, we saw Levi opposite kind of working a double team. I didn't think it was the cleanest thing, but you see him standing in there trying to work. He wasn't blowing off the ball. It just didn't look like the cleanest thing, but it was Chris Smith who I noted with a run stop. John Kaminsky, this was a pretty play. Sometimes you kind of expect it. Like when John Kaminsky matches up with tight end, you expect him to win this matchup. But he basically made the run stop playing as like a stand-up edge through James Mitchell. I mean, it was just kind of disgusting. It was kind of an overpowering play. Then they hit a nice little flat route to Brock Wright. James Houston. So here's where I noted I thought he lost the edge on the play. Some of these I could be off on because I can't completely see everything when it goes away from you. But I thought maybe he lost the edge on the play. Either way, it's something I noted on Monday. It was like, okay, we got to contain a little bit more consistently here. This was an example where I was able to get outside of the edge, and it was an outside zone play, so he was able to work off the tackle and pick up a nice little chunk. That man, and again, when you, like I said, I think when you can build on like what you've seen and you can be like, oh, it happened again, that's awesome, especially from a young guy. Brian Branch, another sack, beating a tight end, slot blitz, immediate like bop bop, make a miss, I'm there on the quarterback. It's nasty. I'm telling you, it's nasty to see how quickly he moves through that, and he had another sack there just like he had on Monday. Then there was another false start, and I believe this may have been on Jermaine Ifedi, but again, I can't say for sure. Regardless though, there was another false start that was in there. Then they hit a nice little out route to Jamison. It looked like it was kind of like a zone beater where they had him kind of open up underneath. He was pretty much wide open on the play. The other guy ran vertical, kind of ran his man off. Then we saw a little out route completion. On this play, I was watching Obina Eze. He was lined up at left tackle. It was probably the wrong time to focus on him. Obina Eze was bull rushed back into the pocket by James Houston. Positive side is Obina Eze is a big dude, and James Houston is not. So if James Houston can create a very pure bull rush, that's going to make him difficult. Now, obviously, this isn't Taylor Decker that he's doing this against, but even last year, like James Houston's bull rushes weren't necessarily the cleanest. They were really low, and they would get like down to your knees, and he could kind of like fly through and trip up the quarterback. A consistent bull rush, but just to improve upon some of the ability there at his size. That's going to make him really tough. And in this case, he drove Obina Eze back in the pocket. So, that's something to keep an eye on. Then back to the next group, Corey Durden. First play, I had him listed with a run stop. Then we had Trevor Nowaski. Trevor Nowaski. I think I'm saying the dude's name wrong. Out of Saginaw Valley State. Here's the thing with Trevor, man. And we talked about him, on Monday. I was saying he was lining at edge and things like that. And, he's not really built as an edge rusher, so I thought he was having trouble with setting the edge. But the athleticism looked good. The movement skills looked really good. And then he also showed some athletic pass rush upside. Here's the thing, though. So today I saw him getting work at off-ball linebacker. Now, this, based on his profile, would make sense. He played that kind of slot, kind of edge role in college. I thought he struggled to block shed. He doesn't necessarily have the body type to be a consistent edge defender. Now, he could probably play a 9, but are you going to get the consistent pass rush, and can he improve upon block shedding or setting an edge against a tight end? Today, I saw him getting work at off-ball linebacker, and the big takeaway for me was the movement skills. He looked really good flying around as an off-ball linebacker, changing direction. It looked very fluid. I thought he was moving really well, working off the ball, and the first one I had was a nice little coverage stop from Trevor. Then Romeo Okwara, who just shut down an end-around play. They tried to get a little tricky, kind of flipped it back to the receiver, shut down, big-time loss. Romeo Okwara was all over that. He was in that stand-up edge roll, kind of on the left side of the formation. And then it was Colby Sorstel. Now, here is where Aiden Hutchinson kind of got his get back. Not to say that this was for sure all on Sourcewell, because there's a lot of pieces to this, like what's the tackle doing? Why are we not able to pass this off? But they created a stunt, I think it was a 3, and he ended up getting the outside shoulder on Sourcewell, and of course they need to be able to switch this off. There was no switch off at all. Hutchinson came from outside inside with tackle and stunt, and the guy was completely like wide open. I mean, there was a huge lane from this run through, and again, that would have been, another sack for Aiden Hutchinson, but that one was just created, and I'm unfortunate I don't know who the defensive tackle was on that play, but someone created that one, but that was right where Colby Sourcewell was blocking at that right guard position. Continuing, we had a James Mitchell, short, 3-yard flat. Jack Campbell came down, made the tackle. Then Isaiah Buggs, who I noted on another play here with this wasn't a run stop, but it was an immediate shed. I thought Isaiah Buggs, because again, when you see how well they're stuffing the run scheme, but also at the same time, what are some of those interior dudes doing? A nice quick shed, and then Jerry Jacobs was able to come down and make a run stop. And then how about this? The next play, I had Isaiah Buggs holding up his run gap, which allowed C.J. Gardner-Johnson to fire in there with the energy that he has, laid a big hit. He's fired up, but the big guys in there handling their business, clearing up the way. Because if you know C.J. Gardner-Johnson, obviously he has ways to deal with offensive linemen. Usually kind of protects himself and then slides around him, but he's not going to stack and shed offensive linemen. So when those dudes handle it up front, he becomes free, he becomes very dangerous, and he can really read the back. He has great vision in the box. So when this was the case and there was an open lane, he met the running back through there. Continuing, how about Denzel Mims? Mims flashed today. Mims really did. Attacking the zone holes, kind of those, post routes over the middle, like the 15, 20 yards, kind of those like ins, those dig routes over the middle of the field, kind of just sitting down in zone holes. And he was flashing in that sense. The first one was a little dig route I had from the left side where he had a nice little bobble on it, like he caught it and then it bobbled, but he ended up finishing, which was great. He finished the play in a zone hole. Then the next play I had was Aleem McNeil and John Kaminsky combining for a sack, followed by a jet run attempt, and then a slant touchdown to guess who? Dylan Drummond. Now, Dylan Drummond, the Eastern Michigan receiver, who wasn't, incredibly productive in college. I think in his 4 years there, I have it wrote down. Yeah, the guy had in 52 games, 2,028 yards, 183 receptions, 14 touchdowns. That's nothing insane in terms of production. 4.6, 240 unofficial, 33-inch vertical, 6'8", cone drill, which is pretty darn good. So I think you speak to some of kind of the agility there. But for a guy that's basically 6 foot, 194, I mean, none of those athletic traits stands out. However, if you can run routes, you can run routes. And for what Dan Campbell said about Dylan Drummond is that, he's making plays pretty much every day. The special teams impact, it's hard to ignore that he's making plays, and then he learns from anything that, maybe he doesn't do well. Dylan Drummond with a slant touchdown on Cam Sutton. I'm telling you, Dylan Drummond was popping day on Monday, and I was like, okay, all right. And then to see him come back and have this, and it wasn't like the craziest touchdown, but he created space, and he got open, and he caught a slant touchdown. Keep an eye on him as we go through our preseason, because I do think there's going to be a real battle there. But I think Denzel Mims has done pretty well from what I've seen. And today I thought he kind of piled on top of that. And then it was KO'd, who I had with a nice little block working against an edge at the left guard position. So when you get an edge, you got that pure pass rusher you got to work with. I thought KO'd had a nice little rep there. So, he kind of gets overlooked. We talk about all these backup linemen. Take a look at KO. He stepped in, and at times he played pretty well for us this past season. Then back to Derek Barnes. Staying with another group here. Derek Barnes gets back in. Fast fill, forces the spill outside, and then who is it? Josh Paschal with the edge set and run stop. Derek Barnes plays very fast when he fills. He plays very fast. And those big dudes handle their job early, he's going to fly around and make plays. Because for him, it's not always just like, I'm just like anticipating it, but he's got like immediate acceleration. Now, the next play that I had was a slant to Amon-Ra St. Brown that was caught on Sterling Thomas. Then they threw a nice little swing pass out there to David Montgomery, and it was John Kaminsky and Savion Smith kind of, coming together on a tackle. And then that drive finished with a touchdown that was thrown as a chip flat, wide open, Jason Kabinda. And again, we talk about, getting those guys wide open down at that area of the field. He had a great chip block. I mean, he threw his man on the ground, and then he leaked out, caught the pass. Wasn't a very difficult pass, but he caught kind of the touch pass, and he ran it into the end zone. So there you go. There's Jason Kabinda making a play. Back to Derek Barnes. I just haven't wrote down a lot. Stop on his own run that I had him wrote down for. Now, on this same drive, the very next play, they went to Jahmyr Gibbs. They gave him a little delay. They gave him a draw. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs has that immediate burst as well. And he's the kind of guy that I feel like if he can feel where the hole is and on the draw or something like this, and everybody kind of pauses, he can hit the gas so fast that he's going to make your fits so tough, because you better feel properly. If not, you're going to be in a really bad spot, and it's going to be almost impossible to recover. And that's kind of seemingly what happened here. Maybe a little bit of a bad fit from Derek Barnes, but on this kind of delayed draw handoff, Jahmyr Gibbs just hit on the gas, and you saw Derek Barnes try to recover, but the speed is just insane there in terms of acceleration through the middle. It was a quick burst. It was a nice run from Jahmyr Gibbs, and it was nice to see a nice little draw play kind of mixed in there a little bit to slow down maybe the pass rush, give him a little bit of a different look. Back to Derek Barnes, though. I got more good news. How about him covering up a little bit of an out route underneath? I thought he covered that pretty well, and it forced the quarterback to go away from it, come back to a check down of the running back where Jalen Reeves-Maybin was in coverage, and the ball just fell incomplete. Hey, Derek Barnes was playing well today, man. I mean, I think he's really well rounding out his game. And I was saying this at camp. If Derek Barnes takes a big leap in year 3 and he really starts to round out his game, the linebacker group becomes very strong, very fast. You know, when you talk about what Jan Campbell's expectations are as a guy that can start day 1, we know what Duracell is a really solid but also a good coverage linebacker. Malcolm Rodriguez came onto the scene very quickly, and he gave us like, oh man, there's something here. And he's still showing that, the IIQ, things like that. There may be limitations, but we know that he's just a really solid linebacker. Now, Jack Campbell at one point lined up on the edge today, so just showing some flexibility. There was a false start, so he actually didn't play a snap there. But with that, and then you throw in Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who we know what he is on special teams / coverage, you throw in a guy like Derek, you know, because he can offset some of those skill sets like a Jalen Reeves-Maybin. If Derek pops, the linebacker group becomes very strong, very fast in terms of what they have of depth. And I thought today was a really good day for him for the most part. Off with a little bit short scramble, you know, to the right, a couple yards picked up there. And then an Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown from Jared Goff. And this was maybe the prettiest play of the day. I mean, I don't know. It may have been. It was a little underneath route, you know, this kind of run on the left hash there. And St. Brown, who had his defender behind him, in Chase Lucas, I mean, Goff fitted into a really tight window, and you just saw the pluck. I mean, if you want to think, like, if I said, okay, a guy, oh, he just plucked that pass, he just snagged that thing. Think of, like, the best example of that in your mind. That's basically what St. Brown did. I mean, the ball didn't move, it was pop, and it was done. I mean, it was like a little bit of a missile in there, short yardage, pop, caught it. I mean, it was a hand sketch. Chase Lucas was on him. Nasty. It was nasty. I was like, that thing was clean. That was probably the prettiest play of the day, at least for the offensive side for me. It was beautiful, and it was a nice little touchdown. Then back to Chris Smith, who I had noted with an immediate shed. Continuing through some of these notes, some of these plays, again, a little bit off there, but you had a little out route to Maurice Alexander, then a false start again. I don't know who this was on. I believe it may have been on Connor Galvin, but I don't know for sure, so I had that one noted as well. But again, back to Trevor. Trevor, again, playing off-ball linebacker in coverage, and you saw him kind of drop, open his hips, dive down, drive down. It was just very fluid. There was a lot of acceleration to the movement there. To the next unit, we saw Chris Smith once again, and I thought he held up pretty well against a double team. Took the cake of the play, you know, laying a big hit. Gilmore has shown kind of that feistiness and willingness to stick his nose in there from the outside, which, you know, in today's league you kind of have to. Or if you're playing in training camp, because if everything's going to be a stretch or an outside zone, your cornerbacks better tackle, okay? Especially if the interior is doing their job. They better tackle, because if the edge isn't set, that guy's going to hit the edge. So the cornerbacks have to, you know, be able to step in, make tackles. We talk about the safeties being able to do that, being able to force, spill. If you're going to spill, someone's got to make the tackle, and the cornerbacks, Stephen Gilmore's willing to do that. And there was an out route, and I believe this was caught by Daryl Daniels. Based on the Lions roster, it was Daryl Daniels, but I thought Daryl Daniels actually caught the touchdown. But the two tight ends that we signed yesterday, I believe they were both involved in some fashion here. So I believe, based on Lions roster, it was Daryl Daniels that caught an out route, you know, short little out route. Then it was Daniel Helm that caught a touchdown in a good step-up pocket by Martinez. Here's our kind of final notes from the 11-on-11 drills. This first one, we have a touchdown by the offense. This is a very, very clean drive. It had two nice completions, starting off with Amon-Ra St. Brown hitting up the seam in a zone hole for a completion. CJ was closest in coverage. And then you had him sitting down in another zone hole beside Alex Anzalone. To the outside, the ball was thrown from the inside linebacker, completed. So two really nice, you know, hitting the zone holes on time, on target with his, you know, number one receiver. And then they came back and punched into the end zone immediately with a gaping hole created by Graham Glasgow, I believe, who led the way through there. But on the interior was an inside zone run, and David Montgomery just kind of walked into the end zone. Now, they went for two, tried to get tricky on him. They tried to do a running back pass. The first guy was covered up. The second one, he didn't see it till late. When he threw it, the ball got tipped in the air, and it was incomplete. But they tried it. The next unit started with Denzel Mims running a post route, hitting a zone hole, completing the pass. Going then to Brock Wright into the flat, throwing a touchdown. Will Harris was in the area, but the guy was pretty much wide open on the play. Down by 3, and they had to settle for a field goal. I believe they were a yard short. I could be wrong. Maybe that's not why they did this, because there was 1 second when they technically kicked the field goal, so maybe it was just a time thing. But I think they were going for the touchdown. They didn't get it, so they ultimately just settled for the field goal. Maybe that was the case here, because I believe he was stopped short. Based on my eye test, when I saw the running back land, I thought he was short. It started off with, as I said, you saw Jack Campbell lining up on the edge. There was a false start. Again, we got to clean those up. Start off with the Khalif Raymond out route, then back to Sam Laporta with an out route. So there you go, back to him attacking level 1 of the defense. And then finally, we saw June Okora here now line up on the edge. We saw an underneath pass to Jahmyr Gibbs, and the ball seemed to be pretty much on target, but it was covered up really well. Jahmyr Gibbs was seemingly short of the first down underneath, and they didn't set out the field goal unit to kick the field goal. And I believe Aiden Hutchinson had a little bit of pressure on this play. After the play, you saw Jared Goff go over to Jahmyr Gibbs and say something to him. I don't know what he said to him, but it seemed like he was just a little bit short on the play, maybe trying to like get on the same page or something exactly there. A couple special team notes as well. They did some like gunner drills, so you would have, you know, your 2 protectors. You'd have your 2 protectors, and you'd have the gunner. And the first one was Savion Smith. I thought he had a really nice block on the gunner, protected it well. Brady Breeze, I thought he lost his block. Then Antoine Green, who fought through Starling Thomas to get to the returner. Then it was Chase Lucas who won as a gunner, and then finally Antoine Green again, who won as a gunner on some of these special teams punt return looks that they did for a little bit of a session there. And so those are some of the key ones that I noted from that session. And when practice ended, you know, you got to see Hendon Hooker stand out there throwing. Talking to my guy, you could see Hendon Hooker kind of out there throwing with the red jersey on. I hadn't really seen it yet, so it was kind of cool. I mean, when you see him and we were kind of far away, like, that dude looks like an NFL quarterback, man. Just the way that he is built physically, like he looks like an NFL quarterback. And you just kind of watch him throw some passes. I saw him running around a little bit, you know, working out that leg. So that's fantastic to see that he's able to do that. We've heard that he's looked good before and after practice, but you saw some of the deep ball, and man, that thing looks pretty. The way that he throws the deep ball is pretty. You could see it. It's just easy for him. He throws the deep ball with ease. There's not a lot of like work that has to be put into those throws. You also saw him miss a pass. There's one that was behind, and that's when he started to run. So, you know, for me, like, again, when I went and watched some Tennessee, and we'll probably have a breakdown of them soon at some point, some easy misses were definitely in there where you're like, that can't be a miss. You can't miss that pass as an NFL quarterback. But then he has the beautiful deep ball throws. He's built like an NFL quarterback. I mean, just from looking at him, it looks like, oh yeah, that's an NFL athlete. And then we know he can run. So he's just an exciting player, and it seems like he's progressing pretty well. And I don't know, you just look at him, he looks like an NFL quarterback. So, you know, again, I didn't get a lot from that, but I was like, okay, I got to see him a little bit, so that was pretty cool. But anyways, those are my notes from today's practice. Before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, BetUS. As I touched on, there's many different ways to get in contact with customer service: phone, email, live chat. There's a toll-free number. And football kicks off tonight. So, I mean, you can bet on that preseason game. Like, it's kicking off tonight if you're in that football mood right now. So, make sure you click that top link in the description if you're going to do it. I mean, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it this way. You might as well claim a bonus. So, click the top link in the description. Use my referral link. I appreciate that as we head into this season. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.